Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I have returned to an author we've only talked about one time on the channel. This is a Weird Tales author that I think has kind of been forgotten, and that is W.C. Morrow. And today we're going to be talking about his most popular, most anthologized short story, which is called His Unconquerable Enemy. Before on the channel, I talked about his short story Over an Absinthe Bottle. So these are the only two of his stories that I've found in my anthologies, and I've got tons of these crazy old anthologies that I absolutely love just picking up and reading. They're so fun. And Over an Absinthe Bottle was just an awesome, weird tale. Like, truly, to me, like when you think of weird tale, that story kind of fits it perfectly. This takes it up a notch. This is wild. So the story follows a European doctor who goes to Calcutta and then is summoned to this kind of countryside estate of a Raja, as he calls him. And here he slowly kind of becomes a part of this household. And in this household, there's this servant that absolutely loves his master, the Raja. But he, in this moment of extreme anger, stabs a dwarf, is all it says. This is late 1890s writing here. But the Raja has his arm cut off, and they do it with an axe. The servant's arm, not the doctor's arm. They do it with an axe, and the doctor's like, he's going to die. So the doctor has to amputate the rest of the arm. And then this servant's love of his master suddenly turns into hatred, and he does something else, and they cut off his other arm. And then he somehow uses his feet to kill the Raja's son, and they're going to have him killed, but then the Raja decides to have them amputate his legs, and they put him in a cage. This is a shockingly gross story, and it is about the revenge that this servant slowly plans and takes on the Raja. I can see why people anthologize this, because it is a quick, sharp jab of shock. This is a wild, disgusting story, which I think is kind of half of what pulp and weird tales were. Is it worth a read? Yeah, I think so. If you're into horror stories, weird tales, I think it's well written, just like his Over an Absinthe Bottle. I think I prefer Over an Absinthe Bottle just because I prefer slow dread and creep a little bit more than shocking, disgusting torture. But yeah, I think that this is absolutely worth a read. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to move on to talking about this publication history a little bit, and then I'll come back and do some spoilers. Before I talk about the publication history, I just want to read, this has Sam Moskowitz writing about each of the writers before their stories, so I just want to read this about the author. In 1936, the Book Club of California issued a series of 6 pamphlets to its members, each containing a story by and an appreciation of a major figure in the literature of that state. The lead-off pamphlet, the first of the series, titled The California Literacy Pamphlets, was a short story by W.C. Morrow, Over an Absinthe Bottle. Charles Caldwell Dobby, introducing the story, said, "Mr. Morrow was a master of the imagination, properly controlled by a lucid style. Another important factor in literature which he also had in great measure was a perfect sense of form. These qualities always combined to raise the mere setting down of words, the dull assembling of facts, the passionate welter of protest, to the dignity of an art." W.C. Morrow's major claim rests on one collection of short stories, The Ape, The Idiot, and Other People, published by J.P. Lippincott Company in 1897. That single volume of 14 stories unequivocally places him in the ranks of Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Fitzjames O'Brien, and Ambrose Bierce as one of the greatest writers of terror this country has ever produced. At the time of publication, the volume went into several editions and was reprinted in England the following year by Grant Richards. What marks Morrow's short stories is an extraordinary originality. He was an innovator. His Unconquerable Enemy is a story of revenge, but such a revenge, accomplished in so bizarre a fashion, that this story, it is safe to say, will never be forgotten by anyone who reads it. And he is absolutely correct. I will never forget this story. So this story was first published in the Argonaut, a literary magazine, and it was published in the March 11th, 1889 edition of that magazine. Then it was published in The Ape, the Idiot, and Other People in 1897. And it is his most anthologized story, so I'm not going to go through a lot of what was between that 1897 and it coming out in Horror Times 10, because there's a lot in between there. But Horror Times 10 is where I read it. This has been a really enjoyable book so far. I'm really liking it. Yeah, this story, I guess, is like the 1880s version of body horror. It's really dark. I think this must have shocked people at the time. Because for me, so far, it's kind of the darkest of the weird tales that I've read. Maybe Poe got all those heads in that one story. That was pretty creepy. So maybe I'm going a little far in saying that it's the most shocking, but it is definitely shocking. It is a little bit hard when you are presented with a book that has an ideology that is not around anymore, right? Ideologies are in constant state of change. The narrator of this story is obviously coming from the mindset of a kind of a colonist. He is viewing all this awfulness and participating. He does save the servant's life by making sure that these amputations are done in ways that won't kill him. But, I mean, it's a form of torture. And he coldly is watching all this. And he expresses very early in the story that to him, these aren't really people of the same caliber as he and his Caucasian European fellows. So that can be a little harsh. I don't know if it, for me, it doesn't speak directly to W.C. Morrow. There's two ways you could take it. Either W.C. Morrow put himself into the text as this surgeon, and he was of the kind of gross ideology of the time, or maybe he was making this character purposely a sociopath, kind of terrible person to critique that. I can't find a lot of information on Morrow, so for that we will never know. And the honest truth is, I kind of feel like we should let the story just stand on its own and be an example of that time. So, yeah, I really think it's worth a read. I think it was very imaginative. It was very terrifying. Sorry, I got a phone call and I don't know if I finished my thought. Yeah, it's strange because I feel like this isn't an imaginative, crazy, scary tale. And it is filled with awful, icky characters. It's kind of like Harlan Ellison, right? I have no mouth that I must scream. When you read that, you need a break because it's so effed up. This felt like that. Like when I was done, I was like, whoa, I need a break. And I had to take a break for a bit because of just how sad and depraved and disgusting this was. I am sorry my phone keeps interrupting. I'm not going to give away the end of this. I think it's well worth a read. This is something you should absolutely check out. The revenge that is planned by the servant is pretty wild. There's nothing. I mean, it's inventive and brilliant, but most of all, it's sad and disturbing. But I think this is well worth a read. I think this is kind of a forgotten gem from Weird Tales. So yeah, check it out. All right. That is all I have for this. I will see you next time.